Can I get your attention, please? Can we just all get seated? We'll continue the socialization after the program, inshallah. It's an integral part. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'd like to welcome everyone for today's auspicious event and commemorating the Wilayah of three holy personalities. They need no introduction. Imam Husayn alayhi salam, Imam Zayn al-Abideen alayhi salam, and Hazrat Abbas. These personalities are what today's modern world calls servant leaders, but leaders in themselves are servants, and they have provided a great deal of service to the religion of Islam. And we'll get to hear a little bit about their accomplishments today and also commemorate their service and contribution to our great religion. So we'll start today's festivities, as always, with the word of the Almighty and the Quran recitation. I'd like to invite Brother Amin Hassan to come and recite Quran. Salawat.
One more loud salawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والليل إذا يغشى والنهار إذا تجلى وما خلق الذكر والأنثى إن سعيكم لشتى فأما من أعطى واتقى وصدق بالحسنى فسنيسره لليسرى وأما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى وما يغني عنه ماله إذا تردى إن علينا للهدى وإن لنا للآخرة والأولى فأنذرتكم نارا تلظى لا يصلاها إلا الأشقى الذي كذب وتولى وسيجنبها الأتقى الذي يؤتي ماله يتزكى وما لأحد عنده من نعمة تجزى إلا ابتغاء وجه ربه الأعلى ولسوف يرضى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا صدق الله العلي العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. By the night when it covers, and by the day when it appears, and by He who created the male and female. Indeed, your efforts are diverse. As for he who gives and fears Allah and believes in the best reward, we will ease him toward ease. But as for he who withholds and considers himself free of need and denies the best reward, we will ease him toward difficulty. And what will his wealth avail him when he falls? Indeed, incumbent upon us is guidance. And indeed, to us belongs the hereafter and the first life. So I have warned you of a fire which is blazing. None will enter to burn therein except the most wretched one, who had denied and turned away. But the righteous one will avoid it, he who gives from his wealth to purify himself, and not giving for anyone who has done him a favor to be rewarded, but only seeking the countenance of his Lord Most High, and he is going to be satisfied. Salawat.
One more salawat, please. So before we begin, none of these programs are possible without community contributions. So I would like to thank the sponsors for tonight's event, Brother Qasim Jafri, Sister Bilqis Razak, Sister Ambreen Fatima, and Sister Sabah Akbar. I'd like you to please recite Fatiha for any deceased for those families. All right, we'll dive into our poetry and mini speech session. So we'll start today's poetry program with Sister Sara Chawla for a poem. Salawat, please.
Please recite Salawat. What makes a believer happy tonight? The air of Medina carries news of delight. The month that brings forth no sad news, Sha'ban for centuries has the disbeliever fused. Prophet in his arms welcomes the ark of salvation, touching his cradle, Fitrus Kain's reincarnation. Husayn created destiny for the one who had none. He gave him 7 when came asking for 1. As a child, Husayn, his miracles unshed, for Habib he makes life return from death. In his progeny, Allah has placed 9 lamps of guidance. By asking bay'at, Yazid has pitched his own subsidence. With Shabir, the status of Karbala has increased manifold, leaving the heavens, angels line up at its threshold. What more could I say about the heaven on earth? With flood of visitors, the shrine never witnesses their dearth. There's no place like the one under his dome. Prayers are answered before one reaches home. The master of the time remembers him day and night. For Fatima, a son, avenging a son will be a price at Salat.
One more salawat, please. All right, I would like to invite Taha Chawla for a small speech. Salawat.
Please recite another loud salawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Tonight I would like to discuss how we can have the best akhlaq according to the teachings of our Imams. Before I continue with my topic, I would like to send my felicitations to the Imam of our time on the Wiladat of our third holy Imam, Imam Husayn alayhi salam, and the Wiladat of our fourth holy Imam, Imam Zayn al-Abideen alayhi salam. Please recite a salawat by their names. So one of the best resources for learning about akhlaq is a dua taught to us in Sahif al-Sajadiyah by our fourth Imam, whose Wiladat we are also celebrating today. Sahif al-Sajadiyah is a book in which Imam Zayn al-Abideen has compiled such du'as that can help us in every circumstance. In this book, there is a dua called Makarimul Akhlaq, which literally means the highest of moral traits. In this dua, the Imam helps us understand the morals that a mu'min should have. In the beginning of the dua, Imam Zayn al-Abideen talks about a very vital part of our ibadat, which is our niyyah. He says, وَانْتَهِي بِنِيَّتِي إِلَىٰ أَحْسَنِ نِيَّاتِ وَبِعَمَلِي إِلَىٰ أَحْسَنِ الْأَعْمَالِ. And make my intention the best of intentions and my deeds the best of deeds. وَعَبِّدْنِي لَكَ وَلَا تُفْسِدْ عِبَادَتِي بِالْعُجُبِ. Make me worship you and corrupt not my worship with self-admiration. Many of us overlook this very vital part of our worship, even though our ibadat are useless without the proper intention. We can understand the importance of our intention from the hadith, لا عمل إلا بالنية, which has been narrated by Imam Zayn al-Abideen in the book Wasail al-Shia. Our intention is for our ibadat should be solely for God. Therefore, if our intention slightly deviates from what it should be, then that worship is not being done correctly. For example, if we do our worship in front of other people solely or partially for the purpose of being noticed, then that is not being done for Allah. After this, the Imam specifies which deeds we should be staying away from and which we should practice. He begins this part by talking about humility. He says, وَعِزَّنِي وَلَا تَبْتَلِيَنِّي بِالْكِبْرِ. Exalt me and afflict me not with pride. وَلَا تُحْدِثْ لِي عِزًّا ظَاهِرًا إِلَّا أَحْدَثْتَ لِي ظِلَّةً بَاطِنَةً عِنْدَ نَفْسِي بِقَدَرِهَا. And bring no outward exaltation for me without an inward abasement in myself for the same measure. Humility is such a trait that has been taught to us by all our ma'asumeen, and they were very well known for it. We have an innumerable amount of incidents where Imams have shown complete humility instead of pride and self-admiration. I would like to share one incident from the life of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. When Imam Husayn had left Medina and was in Mecca, Abdullah bin Zubayr visited him. When he arrived at the Imam's house, he saw that he was sitting with some poor people of Mecca. Ibn Zubayr desired for the poor people to leave, but the Imam continued to talk to them. When the people left, Ibn Zubayr asked why the Imam had let the poor people sit with him so long. The Imam replied, Ibn Zubayr, the upheavals of the woes of these people are in detail, and I want to lighten the burden of their hearts. O Ibn Zubayr, I am the grandson of a grandfather who used to sit with the people of Sufa, which were the homeless destitutes of Medina, after the morning prayer and remain with them till mid-morning, inquiring about their well-being. This shows the level of humility in our Imams. In the next part of the dua, Imam Sajjad talks about how our relationship would be with the other believers. He says, وَأَبْدِلْنِي مِنْ بَغْضَةِ أَهْلِ الشَّنَّانِ الْمُحَبَّةِ. And replace for me the animosity of the people of hatred with love. وَمِنْ حَسَدِ أَهْلِ الْأَبْغَى الْمُؤَدَّةِ. the envy of the people of insolence with affection. وَمِن ظِنَّةِ أَهْلِ الصَّلَاحِ الثِّقَّةِ, the suspicion of the people of righteousness with trust. وَمِن عَدَاوَةِ الْأَدْنَيْنِ الْوِلَايَةِ, the enmity of those close with friendship. In this part of the dua, Imam Sajjad basically created a checklist about how to treat our fellow mu'mineen. He says to treat our brothers with respect and kindness. Many of us underestimate the lofty status of a believer. In fact, if we were supposed to understand the true status of a mu'min, we would completely change our behavior towards them. It is said in Majma' al-Bayan that during the time of the Prophet, there was a Sahabi named Thabit ibn Qais, who was hard of hearing. All of the other Sahaba used to let him sit closest to the Prophet so he could hear the Prophet. One day during the morning prayer, he got a place at the end of the masjid. After the morning prayer, when the Rasulullah was giving a lecture, he tried to go near the Messenger of Allah. But as he was getting closer, one man did not let him go further. After Thabit asked the Imam's name later, he told him his name, and Thabit told him that his mother was notorious for her loose morals before the advent of Islam. At this, the man became ashamed. And an ayah of the Quran was revealed about his wrong deed. This shows how bad it is to even do something that may seem as basic as stopping a mu'min from going where they want to go. These are a few lessons that we can learn from the teachings of Imam Sajjad. May Allah give us the tawfiq to act upon these teachings. Please recite aloud salawat.
One more salawat. I'd like to now invite Muhammad Ibrahim. Salawat, please.
Salawat. The name Husayn, the name Husayn, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. Between my flesh and in my veins, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. The hearts are left in states of bloom when by his name their hearts are kissed. The joy of hearts is tied to all. The name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. Between my flesh and in my veins, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. His dome we yearn, and by design within our hearts he has a shrine. It's made with gold, and on its flank the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name
name Husayn. Between my flesh and in my veins, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. Well then I'll learn he cannot die, for he is of the tears we cry. And if we die, what shall remain? The name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. Between my flesh and in my veins, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. He is Yasin in our Quran, the heart of faith is in his palm. Surah Yasin was written on the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. Between my flesh and in my veins, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. The heart pushes the flow of blood to the tune of a name beloved. The heart recites if you listen the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. Between my flesh and in my veins, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. There's only one name in my heart, the name Husayn, the name Husayn. The name Husayn, the name Husayn. The name Husayn, the name Husayn. Salawat.
Okay, I hope you guys are not allergic to the stage, so if you could just move up a little bit, give some space in the back. Thank you. You're not that close, but I'm kidding, that's fine. All right, our next reciter is Brother Al-Abbas.
Salawat. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Husayn. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Insi wal-Jinnah, Husayn. Father of infant Abdullah and Ali Akbar Husayn. Father of infant Abdullah and Ali Akbar Husayn. O inheritor of Adam, father of freedom, Husayn. O inheritor of Adam, father of freedom, Husayn. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Husayn. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Insi wal-Jinnah, Husayn. You established prayer, you gave your everything in charity. You established prayer, you gave your everything in charity. You enjoined the right, forbade injustice and iniquity. You enjoined the right, forbade injustice and iniquity. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Husayn. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Insi wal-Jinnah, Husayn. Al-Husayn minni qala wa ana min al-Husayn. Anta sayyidu ahlil jannah was-safina ya Husayn. Mustafa said, you are from me, I from you, O Husayn. Prince of paradise, you are a sanctuary, O Husayn. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Husayn. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Insi wal-Jinnah, Husayn. Marhaba ya Thar Allah, Khirat Allah Mustafa. Anta nafsul mutmainna, Anta misbahul huda. Your avenger, Your avenger is Allah. Your selector is Allah. Your contented soul, a lamp of guidance in every era. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Husayn. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Insi wal-Jinnah, Husayn. Salutations to the son of Mustafa and Murtada. Salutations to the son of Mustafa and Murtada. Marhaba, son of Khadija and the heart of Fatima. Marhaba, son of Khadija and the heart of Fatima. King of martyrs, O Imam of man and jinn, Mawla Husayn. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam al-Insi wal-Jinnah, Husayn. Salawat.
MashaAllah. Thank you. And another loud salawat, please. All right, before we transition to the speech, I have one exciting announcement. It's about food. There is a community brunch being planned. It's a joint effort. Let me recite the associations. There's AIM Association, Imam Ali Center School, Imam al-Asr Masjid, Rosh Academy, and Imam Ali Center. All Northern Virginia centers, a great time for our Nova community get together. I don't know why the event is in Maryland, but you can you can talk to Brother Shirazi over there and he can give you more details. 2 days to remember, it is gonna be March 12th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The date you should also remember is March 4th, that is the cutoff. So please register by March 4th so the planners can plan accordingly. I won't give you the address because you're going to forget anyway. And there'll be plenty of other announcements that will be shared with you. So keep an eye on that. It is called the Eid Community Brunch. So March 12th, get everybody ready for Ramadan, which will be in another week or so. So with that, again, I want to thank all of our reciters today. Thank you so much for preparing and providing your pursa. We would move forward to our main speech, and I'd like to welcome Hujjatul Islam Sayyid Sulayman to the stage. Please give a loud salawat.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد. Respected Sayyid, dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And a very heartfelt Eid Mubarak on these blessed occasions in the month of Sha'ban that we are celebrating tonight, and that we will be celebrating and remembering in the coming days and nights of this sacred month. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Today in particular, we are remembering three of the most important personalities in the story of Islam and the history of our religion, but not just the history, also important for the present and the future of our faith. They are, first and foremost, our third Imam, the grandson of our blessed Prophet, the Prince of Martyrs, and the one who started the movement of humanity for the spread of truth and justice in every corner of the earth, and the movement that continues and shall continue until it is fulfilled in accordance with the promise of Allah. Imam Husayn ibn Ali alayhim as-salatu was-salam. The second person is the son of the Prince of Martyrs, our fourth Imam, Imam Ali ibn al-Husayn Zayn al-Abideen alayhim as-salam. And the third is the aid and assistant, the companion and the brother, the commander and the standard bearer of the army of Imam Husayn, his beloved brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. Two of these are ma'sumeen, and the proofs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for humanity. And the third of them, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, was not an imam and was not ma'soom, but he was somebody who was so pure and so elevated in his character that even the ma'soomeen spoke of him with respect and admiration. And in particular, our fourth Imam, Imam Zayn al-Abideen alayhi salatu was-salam, he spoke very highly of his uncle. Now, Imam Zayn al-Abideen was the one person in all of Islamic history whose purity and piety, whose worship and devotion reminded people most of all of the purity and piety and the worship and the devotion of Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu was-salam. This is the testimony of our fifth Imam, Imam Baqir, that when he would engage in worship, even if he would worship over the entirety of a night, then he would say, "Bring the book in which it is written. What was the worship of my ancestors?" And he would report, the report is from our fifth Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, about the worship of his father, Imam Zayn al-Abideen. That how is it possible for anyone to do what Imam Ali did? But when people would look at our fourth Imam, they would see a reflection, they would see a ray of that source of light that was the worship of Imam Ali. Now, Imam Zayn al-Abideen himself says, somebody who is an Imam is a ma'soom. Among the ma'soomeen, who is somebody that shares a name and is the closest reflection of the standard of devotion and worship and purity, Imam Ali. And he says that my uncle Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was somebody who possessed a deep insight and an understanding of religion. So you can see that even as a non-ma'soom, even not being an imam, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas had a very elevated spiritual rank. And this is one of the answers that we can give to people who sometimes say, how can we model ourselves on the character of Ahlul Bayt? They were protected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were ma'soom. And so sometimes we may feel a little bit of difficulty in modeling our behavior and our character on them. Well, the reality is that to be ma'soom does not mean that you have an easier path to be good. And let me just give you an example. If you have knowledge, if you are smarter than the average person, is it easier for you to get a good grade in class? Let's say I have average intelligence. I have to pay attention, I have to read the textbook, I have to study, and then I, with difficulty, am able to get a decent grade. And then I have a friend, they are paying attention half of the time, they don't crack open the book after class, but because they're smart, they're able to get an easy A. So it is easier. But you know what else it's easier to do if you are smarter than average? It's easier to cut corners. It's easier to cheat. Successful criminals are going to be above average intelligence because the mastermind will always be above average intelligence. Because if you are not, then you'll get caught not the first time, but the second time. And if not the second time, then the third time. So when it comes to getting the easy A, being smart, it does help. But it doesn't mean that you have an easier chance at being a good person, because you also see all the shortcuts, and the temptation that you are going to have is going to be a harder temptation than the person who is of average intelligence or below average intelligence. And therefore, if you get not just a good grade, but if you remain a good person, then you deserve the credit. And people can't say that, well, because you were smarter, you had a shortcut. All you had a shortcut for was the meaningless standard of getting a good grade, not the actual valuable standard of being a good person. So for the Ma'asumeen alayhimus salam, they don't have any shortcut to heaven. They were subjected to all of the same obligations and all of the same tests that other human beings were subjected to. And in fact, the temptation that came to them from shaitan was even harder than the temptation that came to anyone else. And so, they chose, through the grace that was given to them by Allah and the knowledge that was given to them by Allah, to say no to the temptation and to obey. It wasn't that they were given a shortcut, or that they did not earn their rank and it was just given to them freely by Allah. They earned it in every sense of the word. And so even for the ma'asumeen, we cannot say that because they are ma'asum, they are not a role model. They didn't have a guaranteed place in heaven. They earned the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed them with. But if sometimes we find it difficult, if sometimes the very barrier of their character makes it hard for us to relate to them, then Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas was not ma'asum. He was somebody who had earned his position through his devotion and his love for those chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes the sun is too bright, so you can't look at the sun. But then when a cloud comes in front of the sun and you still get the light, but you have a little bit of respite from the heat, then you can enjoy that day and you can enjoy the beauty of the sun's light even more. Now, the source of everything that we learn from the companions of the Imams, the source of everything that we learn from Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas is our Imams. But sometimes it is easier for us to learn from and to make as a role model a person who we find more similar to us in the struggles that they have to embark on. So, Imam Husayn alayhi salam, Imam Zayn al-Abideen, and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, three personalities who were born right in the beginning of the month of Sha'ban. And it is difficult for us to believe that this is anything but a deliberate desire by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to relive Karbala, not just in Muharram, but also in Sha'ban. Because all three personalities are the heroes of Karbala. And even the dates of their birth are arranged in order of their age and their presence in the life of Ahlul Bayt and Islam. On the 3rd of Sha'ban, we have the birth of Imam Husayn. And just a quick review of the dates, just so that those of us who have studied it, we can refresh our memories, and those of us who may not know, we can learn. Imam Husayn, according to most reports, was born on the 3rd of Sha'ban in the 4th year of Hijrah. So when the event of Karbala took place and Imam Husayn was martyred, he was 57 years old, and at that time, his son, Imam Zayn al-Abideen, was present. And even his grandson, Imam Muhammad Baqir, was also present as a 4-year-old child. 3 of our Imams were present in Karbala: Imam Husayn, Imam Zayn al-Abideen, and Imam Muhammad Baqir. Salawat ala Muhammad. So Imam Husayn was born on the 3rd of Sha'ban, in the 4th year of Hijrah. Then on the 4th of Sha'ban, we have the birth of Imam Husayn's younger brother and the son of Imam Ali, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And according to some narrations, this was in the year 26 after Hijrah. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, he was born about 14 years before the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and that means that he was about 34 or 35 years of age in Karbala. So, Imam Husayn on the 3rd of Sha'ban, the second personality who was central to the event of Karbala because he was the commander of the Imam's army on the day of Ashura, was born on the 4th of Sha'ban. And then on the 5th of Sha'ban, we have the birth of the one who was also one of the heroes of Karbala. Not because he fought on the day, or not because he had a very prominent role on the day of Ashura. He was ill, and fever did not allow him to partake in the battle. But anything that you and I know about Karbala, what took place and the significance of those events, all of that is because of our 4th Imam and how he kept alive and how he passed on the message of Karbala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that he would be born on the 5th of Sha'ban. According to many narrations, on the 38th year of Hijrah. So he was approximately 23 years of age, almost 23 years of age in the event of Karbala. So on the 3rd of Sha'ban, Imam Husayn alayhi salam. On the 4th of Sha'ban, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And on the 5th of Sha'ban, Imam Zayn al-Abideen. Separated by several decades in terms of their birth, but very close in their position on the Islamic calendar, the order of their birth, and in the chronological order of their role and their importance in the events that took place, which are the greatest source of guidance and inspiration for the followers of Ahlul Bayt, and that is the supreme sacrifice that took place in Karbala on the day of Ashura. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And what do we learn from that? Well, whenever I say Karbala, the first thing that comes into any of our hearts is grief. And that is something which is part of human nature. Some of you may have heard that there are groups of Muslims who say that we should not grieve on Ashura. Have any of you heard that objection to the mourning and the tears and the grief of Ashura? Sometimes people who claim to be Sufis, they say that, well, Allah honored Imam Husayn with martyrdom. This is an honor, and therefore you should celebrate. It is the day of the ascension. It is the day of the supreme triumph and victory of Ahlul Bayt. And that is true. There are many answers that can be given, but the quickest and the briefest answer is that there are many ahadith from our Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa alih that when Imam Husayn was born, that is also a day of celebration. And it is recommended in Islam to give a walima and to celebrate with your family and with your neighbors and community when you have a new birth. But when Imam Husayn was born, Jibreel came down and told our beloved Prophet that this grandson of his would be martyred. That martyrdom was going to take place many years in the future. The Prophet was not being informed that Imam Husayn was going to die in a few days or in a few weeks. He was being informed that your grandson is going to die 47 years after your own death, after he has lived what was at that time an average lifespan. He had children and he had grandchildren, and yet at that moment of Imam Husayn's birth, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih shed tears. Not because there was a tragedy that had taken place or a tragedy that was about to take place. And many people at that time, if they were told that their sons would live for 57 years and they would have a family and they would pass on their family, then they would say, Alhamdulillah. That was not the longest life, but it also was not an unusually short lifespan in that day and age. And yet it is the sunnah of our Prophet to mourn and to grieve when informed of a tragedy, even though at that moment when our Prophet was informed of the tragedy, it was that news of the supreme triumph and victory, and not the defeat or the loss that Imam Husayn would suffer. So that is one answer to the question, why do you mourn the martyrdom of those who were killed in Karbala when they achieved a victory? But there is another part to the answer to that question. And this is, there is a time to celebrate. Karbala for us is not just about grief. It is not just about tears. It is not just about suffering. But in reality, it is a source of inspiration. Yet we don't mourn in Muharram. For us, Karbala is a time and an occasion, both for grief and for inspiration. But we don't celebrate the martyrdom, even if it was the supreme victory for Ahlul Bayt. And it was the supreme victory for the followers of Ahlul Bayt, because everything that we have of our religious identity and strength and spirituality, it comes from that one event. That was what allowed the Quran and the message of the Prophet to survive and to come to us. The way in which we commemorate Karbala is to make sure that Karbala can be a source of inspiration for our own lives. And when the anniversary of the tragedy takes place, we grieve, because it is through that grief and the recognition of the greatness of that tragedy and the recognition of how much humanity lost when its Imam was martyred and when its Imam was left alone, that we are able to commit not to leave Ahlul Bayt alone with our intentions and our actions and our resources that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. We cannot ignore the gravity of that tragedy and the obligation that it brings upon us to say that we shall not abandon Ahlul Bayt. And so when the day of Ashura comes, we fully grieve and we fully commit to remember the tragedy and to be on the side of Imam Husayn. But then there is also another aspect to Karbala. Today you'll find a lot of people who are filled with a loss of hope and cynicism. A recession is coming, prices have gone up, the economy is going to hell, politics does not inspire any hope. Already people are predicting who are going to be our candidates for the 2024 election. And on all sides of the aisle, there is no cause for hope or optimism. So when people look at society, when people look at popular culture, when people look at the economy, when people look at politics, they are often filled with cynicism and a loss of hope. And the other aspect of the message of Karbala is that it doesn't matter what is happening on the surface. It doesn't matter what is happening on the outside in society. Your salvation was never going to come from an election for you to be that disappointed that there are no good candidates on the horizon. Your salvation was never going to come from technology for you to be that disappointed at the nature of the economy or the nature of the society that you live in. Your salvation and your source of hope is to come from within your own soul and from humanity understanding its spiritual potential and following the path of truth and guidance and saying no to temptation and the call of shaitan. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The source of hope is not that you won the outward battle. The source of hope is that you won the inner battle. That even if the world forgot, you remembered what is the purpose of your life. Even if it is difficult and people mock you because your name is Muhammad or your name is Fatima, or because you practice your religion, then you don't lose the confidence to practice and to be grateful and to take pride in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Not because you're rich, but because you are enriched through your values and through your beliefs and through your faith. And that is the other side of the message of Karbala. On the day of Ashura, there was the supreme victory of Ahlul Bayt. Not because they had more soldiers. Not because they had a military victory. Not because Ibn Ziyad or Ibn Sa'ad or Yazid realized on that day that they had lost everything. But because through their devotion and through their sacrifice and through their worship on that day, the martyrs of Karbala and the heirs of Karbala set the greatest example of what brings success and salvation to humanity in any day or any era or any circumstances. We're not trying to create a revolution to overthrow a government, but we are trying to live a revolution to change our hearts. And only through that can humanity unfetter the chains of oppression and evil. And by bringing together these 3 days of celebration and birth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing us to remember Karbala again. Not through the lens of the suffering and the tragedy, but through the lens of the triumph and what gives hope. And in a world that is filled with so much suffering, that is a message that we are in the greatest need of. Every time you look at your phone, you turn on any kind of media, you will see advertisements. What should you buy? How are other people living? What luxuries are there that I didn't even know about that you can now find to make your life easier? And sometimes we think that this is a must-have item. This is a game changer. I just need this, and then I will be happy. Everything in society and millions of dollars are being invested to make you unhappy with what you have, no matter how good it may be. To tell you that the solution to whatever insecurities you have or whatever needs you have, it comes from the outside. And the reality is that you can be a billionaire and you can be poor. I'm not going to make any names, but you can look around you and you can find people who have everything in this world, wealth and power and fame and whatever they may need. But they are poorer than the worst suffering person in the world. There are people who are homeless. There are people who are refugees. There are people who have no citizenship or passport, who are more human and who are richer than those who have everything. Because salvation and tranquility and success and humanity does not come from without, it comes from within. And the life of our Imams, and in particular the life of the heroes of Karbala, that is the greatest reminder of that reality. A reminder that we need every day and every moment in our own lives. Imam Husayn alayhi salam, salawat ala Muhammad. I would just like to say a few words about Imam Husayn and about Imam Zayn al-Abideen, and then inshallah we will conclude for today. Imam Husayn was the final of the personalities who were brought by the Prophet under his cloak in the event known as Hadithul Kisa. All of our Imams were given their appointment through our Prophet. But 3 of our Imams were given their appointment to Imamat not through our Prophet, but directly by our Prophet. First Imam Ali, then Imam Hassan, then Imam Husayn. All of our subsequent Imams, it was through Imam Husayn that the legacy and the command of our Prophet reached them. That Imam Husayn was the last of our Imams who in this life had lived with our Prophet and was given his appointment and his authority directly by the Prophet. And that is why time and time again, in those final moments of his life, our Imam and those with him said that there is nobody who is an heir of the Prophet. There is no one who is a grandson of the Prophet alive on the face of the earth except Imam Husayn. And how can the Ummah not honor his character and his role for the Ummah? One incident from our Imam's life. You know that in the time of the Imams, slavery was a common practice. Not in the Muslim world, but throughout the world. That's a whole discussion. What were the reasons politically, socially, economically that slavery, it could not be eliminated? But one thing we can say is that Ahlul Bayt, every single member of Ahlul Bayt was famous for their using every excuse to give freedom to slaves. Imam Husayn alayhi salam was given a single rose as a gift by a slave girl. And Imam Husayn said, I thank you for that gift, and now I set you free in the name of Allah, seeking the pleasure of Allah. And now the point I want to make is that people in society, because it was a slave-owning society, people had slaves. So they would criticize our imams, and you will find many similar incidents in the lives of all of our imams. That why are you setting free a slave? What is the value of a rose? I can go outside and I can find a rose bush and I can pluck a flower and I can bring it to you, I can give it to you a gift. You don't even have to go to Giant and buy it. It's free. And the Imam says that the Quran has taught me, وَإِذَا حُيِّيتُم بِتَحِيَّةٍ فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنَ مِنْهَا أَوْ رُدُّوهَا. If you are given a greeting, then either return it better than you received it, or at the very least give it back. She gave me a gift, and so I wanted to give her something better. And the Imam was also giving a lesson to society that for you, having a slave is a way to get power and to earn money. But for us, it is a means to give a person dignity and freedom when they have been taken by circumstance to the most vulnerable and difficult place in society. This was Imam Husayn. And one hadith about our fourth Imam, Imam Zayn al-Abideen. He had many titles, and many of his titles related to his ibadah. Zayn al-Abideen means the one who is an adornment for those who worship. Dhuthafanat is the one who used to go so frequently into prostration that on his forehead and on his body and on his knees he had developed calluses because of the frequency of his prostration and his worship. And one of his titles was As-Sajjad. And a companion of our fourth and fifth Imams, Jabir al-Ju'fi, he narrates that there is a reason why Imam Zayn al-Abideen got this title, Sajjad. Whenever he remembered a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would go into prostration. Now, I'm not saying you have to go into prostration whenever you remember a blessing of Allah, but at the very least, say in your heart, Alhamdulillah, Ash-shukru lillah. So many of us, we've received so many blessings that it's become habit. Being able to eat meat when we want, and vegetables when we want, and have a drink when we want, and have a comfortable place to sleep every night, we take it for granted. That's not a blessing, because I've never had anything else. In the dead of winter, if I want to take a shower in the morning, I have hot water. I don't think twice about it, because I've never had to experience the difficulty of finding clean water and then taking a shower in the cold with cold water. But all of those are blessings. The fact that I'm spoiled doesn't mean that it is not a blessing. And if you want not to be spoiled, you don't have to take yourself out of the blessings. You just have to be grateful and remember who is the source of those blessings. So whenever you see a blessing of Allah, go into sujood. Then Jabir says the second thing is Imam Zayn al-Abideen, whenever he would read a verse of Quran that mentions prostration, he would go into prostration. The third thing is whenever he would finish a wajib prayer, faridah, he would go into prostration, which is sajdatul shukr. And so, our Imam, he would do prostration when he remembered a blessing of Allah. When he read a verse that talks about prostration, whenever he would do a wajib prayer. And the fourth and final thing, Jabir says that whenever Imam Zayn al-Abideen saw two people who were fighting, a family member, a brother and a sister, two brothers, two neighbors, two believers, two cousins, two business partners, whenever he saw that there was a misunderstanding and a disagreement. Some of us, we kind of enjoy the gossip. But Imam Zayn al-Abideen, he would say that let me go and let me say a good word about each of them and soften their heart. Maybe invite both of them so they can see each other and they can clear the air, because sometimes we develop a little bit of suspicion when we don't see each other for many days. And so the fourth thing that Jabir mentions is that whenever Imam Zayn al-Abideen would be able to bring back two people who had been fighting and bring their hearts together and do islahu dhatil bayn, Imam Zayn al-Abideen would go into prostration. And for these four reasons, he would do prostration so frequently: by remembering the blessings of Allah, by reading the verses of Quran, by performing his wajib prayers, and by bringing people's hearts together, that he was given the title As-Sajjad, the one who is constantly doing sujood and prostration. These are Salat ala Muhammad wa. These are the most noble and honorable examples for us. Through their suffering and through their tragedy, they gave us hope, and they gave us a path to success and salvation. And through their character, they showed us what is the noblest way that a human being can live. Today we celebrate the birth of 3 of the members of the household of the Prophet, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the advent of the final heir of the Prophet's honor and message. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of us a gift on this Eid through the appearance of our Imam and allowing us to witness and partake in his worldwide message of the spread of Islam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام على علي أمير المؤمنين. السلام على فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام على الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام على علي بن الحسين زين العابدين. السلام على محمد بن علي الباقر. السلام على جعفر بن محمد الصادق. السلام على موسى بن جعفر الكاظم. السلام على علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام على محمد بن علي الجواد. السلام على علي بن محمد الهادي. السلام على الحسن بن علي الزكي العسكري. السلام على الحجة بن الحسن القائم المهدي. صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. صلوات.
Excuse me, couple of announcements. We have a young reciter. If we can give her a few minutes, she wants to recite Dua Hujjah.
Allahumma kullu walika الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائك في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
For children, pizza is in the other room. There is a height limit, so don't, if you're taller than 4'5", no, I'm kidding. Kids, pizza in the other room. And tomorrow there will be an Urdu program, same time. Yes, ladies and children in the other room. This place is getting crowded. कह दिया